The Muscatine City Council will come to order. Good evening, everyone. We'll begin tonight, as usual, with a roll call. Greg?
Not prepared. Councilmember Spread.
Present.
Phillips.
Present.
Bynum.
Present.
Shade. Natfig.
Fitzgerald. They're here.
Brett.
Present.
5 present, 2 absent, Your Honor.
That's what I counted as well, Greg. Thank you. Item number 2 on tonight's in-depth agenda, review of the city's employee handbook and/or ethics policy. Stephanie Romanelli.
Good evening. I'm going to slide this over a little bit so I can. All right. This is really an update of our current employee handbook. I'm just going to cover some of the highlights of the things that we have added and changed. There really aren't very many additions or changes this time around. We did this, I think, 2 years ago, and this is just to add in those. I'm still getting used to this glasses thing. I only need them to read, and not sure what to do with them in between. So the biggest addition to the employee handbook is an ethics policy, which we've not had in writing in the past. And a couple things that we're kind of driving. We have a number of different policies that address ethics issues like use of city equipment, Iowa gift law, things like that have governed employees. But we never had it all written down in one place of what we expect of employees in that regard. Their expectations have been out there, employees have been aware of them, but they've never been reduced to writing. The other reason that we decided we needed to adopt an ethics policy is a number of the grants that we apply for as an organization ask us for a copy of our ethics policy. And over the years, it's worked, but we've been piecing it together. And so rather than doing that, we thought it would be a better idea just to have a policy that is clear to everybody that that's what it is. So that's a drafted version that the city department heads have all reviewed, and we've had some discussion on, and we'll be presenting to you next week. We're going to approve this next week, request approval next week, right, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. If you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. The other bigger change in the handbook is some change in the language about political activity. The policy in here, just to clarify, addresses what they do on their work time. They cannot use city work time to campaign for partisan politics, and clarifies use of any city equipment, city facilities, those kinds of things for campaign purposes. And this has been updated in conjunction with the updates that are being done to the city code.
Which also reflects the state code.
Right, and I had a question there. I'm looking at it right now. Can you give me the high-level overview? What is the common law rule of conflict of interest? Is that written into state code?
Our document, our code was pulled from the state code. And in as many places as possible, we tried to do that.
Sure.
Based on the city attorney's recommendation. We either cited or pulled language from the state code. So you'll find the definitions in there. I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Okay.
it is pulled essentially straight from the state code.
Okay. I just, as I read our policy statement, and this also refers to 2 code sections, I think 68A and B, and as I read those, I was getting confused. So this governs personal activity on city time, basically.
Correct. Does not address their political activity outside of.
Right. And as I read this, if someone wants to become a candidate for elective office, they automatically get a 30-day, what is it here? I'm trying to read it now. They get 30 days off, basically, as a leave of absence to campaign.
And I believe that's specified in the Iowa code.
Okay. So now we do have a situation where a city employee did this, is elected, and is a member of the legislature.
Yes,
And that person takes a leave of absence while the legislature is in session.
Yes.
correct.
Is that written in here?
It's
It is-
required by
Does it-
state
does
code.
It is not written in here.
Part of state code?
Yeah,
Yes. Under the election laws, I believe, but it is required under state code.
Okay. Okay. Just trying to understand it all, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay.
Stephanie?
Yes.
This applies to city employees, but not department heads and not some other people?
It applies to all
It
city
would,
employees.
it would apply to all city employees, including department
Is
heads.
it?
Mm-hmm.
How did I misread that?
But it does not apply to elected officials.
Yeah, I read that.
Right.
I read that.
I'm not sure what you were looking at, but if you see it again,
I'll call
let
you.
me know. Yeah, give me a call and I'll. But yes, it applies to all city employees. Okay. The social media policy is one that you adopted a couple of years ago, I think a year and a half maybe ago. And this is not a change to this policy, it's just addition of it to the handbook. We had it as a standalone policy since we had not, didn't have an update of the handbook when we adopted that policy. So there's no change to our policy in that, we're just actually including it in the city handbook, in the employee handbook. Are there any questions on that, though? Yes.
Will handbooks be printed for all city employees, or the suggestion to access the manual online?
Both. We will print handbooks for all city employees. They need to sign that they've received them. But they are also available to city employees through their email and through our internal
Couldn't
Dropbox
we
access.
save a little printing if we just had them sign a signature sheet and they review it online? Does everyone have access?
Not everyone has access to a computer during their workday. Not everyone has a city email address.
So is that half? Is that a quarter? I'm thinking of printing costs and all the paper. I'm on page 20 right now and under amazingly smoking policy, but it's 35 or 40 pages long, right? So if we could cut out half of the city staff.
We'll ask and confirm if we can simply say it can be found at this location or this address on our website, or if we have to actually hand them a physical copy.
Okay.
We'll confirm that
Okay.
before our next meeting.
Thank you.
And the residency requirement was changed to reflect the changes. Again, that's a change you've made in the past, in a past meeting, and just is being updated in the handbook to reflect that change. Then that's changing from the county requirement to the 30 air miles from City Hall. And then the only other change I really would point out, unless you have specific questions, is some change in our drug testing policy, which was changing from probable cause to reasonable suspicion, which is just a technical legal language change. There's no change in the enforcement of that policy in any way. And then we also did add in that the police officers are now randomly tested, which we added at the last union negotiations with them. So those things are updated to reflect those changes as well. And that's really, other than a couple of minor language changes or clarifications, those are the only changes that we've made at this point. And so if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
On page 24, there was an item about use of city equipment, about state law prohibits public employees from using city equipment for personal use.
That's eliminated?
That's been kind of pulled out, put in a different section or something.
Yes,
wasn't
Put it in the
it's been
ethics
put
policy.
into the ethics
Okay,
policy,
okay.
yes. There's no change to the language, just moved it to a different place.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
On page 7.
yeah.
You see it
Well, I
on
saw it
city-
earlier as an addition, and then when I was looking through it a second time, I saw it, struck out,
Yeah.
so.
Just incorporated all those kinds of things together in one place. Yes, sir.
Steph, are firefighters in a random drug test pool as well?
They are not at this time.
They are subject to the reasonable suspicion, as are other employees, all other employees.
And post-accident.
Yeah, and I would assume.
Right.
post-accident.
Post-accident at 1,000, or is it?
$1,000.
$1,000. Estimated damage.
Council, anyone else have questions for Stephanie? Very good, thanks, Steph.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Up next on the agenda, item number 3, presentation on the Colorado Street Reconstruction Project. We do have a special guest tonight. Randy, would you introduce our guest?
Thank you, Mayor. Stephanie, you put your glasses on and use them this way. And, the crisis of the night. Colorado Street, Cedar Street, both are in the 11th hour, and we are planning on bidding this project. Colorado in September, was August, got moved back a month. And we feel as though this would be as good a time as any to give the city council just one more time and the public kind of a comprehensive review of what this project is all about. At the August 1st city council meeting, we will be setting a public hearing. That public hearing will be at the August 15th city council meeting. But tonight is kind of the pre-public hearing meeting, an opportunity to ask Bob Tobin, who is here from Shoemaker Holland. Shoemaker Holland is the engineering firm who has done the design work for us on this project. And Bob is going to give basically an overview of the Colorado Street project, reconstruction project. Bob?
Thanks, Randy. As Randy said, my name's Bob Tobin. What I guess how I'm...
Probably have to stay as close to the microphone as you can, Bob.
Okay.
There you go.
My name's Bob Tobin. Here to talk about Colorado Street tonight. I've kind of handed out kind of a summary of what I'll be talking about. Kind of, I think I would characterize them as my cheat notes as I present. I'll have some aerial mapping as well as just some overall area drawings to talk about. First, I'll probably start out, just talk a little bit about the history of the area and the project, then talk in more detail about the project itself, as well as then getting into a little bit of the multimodal aspects, the phasing, and then ultimately talking about the cost, where we're at on the project relative to that. So to start, I'll click here. Sure. Maybe a little tougher to see than I had planned here, so bear with me. Hopefully this isn't too much of a strain, but to give you a little bit of history, we kind of learned this through, learned this through looking at plans as we investigated the project through the DOT. The original originally, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this, originally Colorado was straight. It didn't have the curve that it does now, and that would have been back in 1933. Which was kind of the oldest plans that we had to look at. Probably before that, it was straight as well. At that same time, Colorado Street was the north boundary of Muscatine, the city boundary. Then, and again, at that time, Colorado Street had about a 33-foot right-of-way to fit the roadway in. Then, at the same time, in 1933, the DOT, I believe, constructed, actually paved Park Avenue as a two-lane, two-way roadway with 9-foot lanes. In the 1950s, the Colorado Street right-of-way was widened to 60 feet. As well, the Park Avenue was increased to a 4-lane roadway at that time. And then in the 1960s, Colorado was realigned to intersect Park Avenue across from Clay Street, and I believe that was probably to eliminate too many conflict points, if you will, right along Park, and trying to keep those intersections or drivers' attention for intersections at the same location. And then in 1998, University Drive was constructed that connected kind of the back end of Colorado Street to the north. And all this time, Colorado Street remained, for the most part, a rural section. There was, in the 60s, was when I believe the first portion of the 3-lane was done. But the rest of the road to the east was a 2-lane rural section, thin lanes and ditches. And you can kind of, from that, you can kind of identify the need that as the city grew to the northeast with all these improvements to the roadways, that Colorado Street kind of lagged behind a little bit. I think in the early 2000s, staff identified the need for improving Colorado Street as development along Colorado Street, I think, increased some of the residential multifamily development that you see today. In the mid 2000s, staff pursued federal aid for the project and received $1.2 million in federal aid to help the project move forward. And then in 2010, Shoemaker and Holland was brought on board to assist with the design. In 2011, 2012, staff identified the benefit of softening the curve on Colorado Street, and we began the process of talking to the Pierce furniture owners and trying to gain the property to allow for that curve softening to occur. And the thought process at that time was that that could not happen. The reconstruction would go basically back on the old alignment. Once that became successful, staff pursued the additional right-of-way necessary from the adjoining property owners in 2013. And as Randy indicated, at this time, we're anticipating a 2013 September letting for the project. This kind of represents, I'll kind of shrink this first and then we can kind of increase it. This kind of represents the whole Colorado Street corridor. It starts at Park Avenue and goes to 300 feet west of University Drive, with the exception that we're putting in a new stop island right at the corner of University and Colorado to allow motorists to get a little closer to universities, better visibility, if you will, to make that movement. Because I think right now the stop sign is back. People pull up to it, stop, but really can't see, and then they end up pulling forward anyway and stopping again and before they make their movement. The project itself, I'll blow this up again a little bit. You can see it'll include a new turn lane on the corner of Park and Colorado. The turn lane will start just to the north of the current entrance to the come and go. The project will, as we indicated, will also include the stop island at University Drive. It'll include new storm sewer. It'll be an urban section, a curb and gutter section versus the rural section that's there. The ditches will be filled in and storm sewer put in place to assist with the drainage. There'll be a new box culvert put in near Weed Park. Right there. And sanitary sewer, new sanitary sewer, kind of relocated sanitary sewer going back the other direction. Right now there's a sanitary sewer that runs under the Meineke building, kind of along the old alignment of Colorado Street. There are several utilities that follow that old alignment. But for the sanitary sewer, we'll be relocating that along Colorado Street and abandoning the section of sewer that's under the Meineke building. There'll also be new water main that gets installed. Again, the old water main runs along the old alignment of Colorado Street. A new water main will be put in place along the new alignment and extend just to the east of Cobblestone Drive, and then cut back and tie into the existing Muscatine Power and water main. Muscatine Power and Water had incurred a fair amount of water main breaks in this corridor, so that's one of the reasons that they wanted to replace the main as well. One of the things that we looked at as we did the design on this project was the multimodal aspects. complete streets aspects of the project. Things that we, that was a high priority with city staff, and I think we wanted to, that was balanced against the acquiring additional right-of-way and other things. So as part of the project, there'll be a new 5-foot sidewalk on the north side, extending from Park Avenue all the way down to, again, about 300 feet to the west of University Drive. That new sidewalk will serve pedestrians. It'll connect to the Running River Trail. It'll be available for, I guess what I would say, the more novice or unexperienced cyclists. The more experienced cyclist can drive or ride in Colorado Street. And, with the wider section, should have more of an ability to have vehicles pass around them. As well, a new bus stop will be added right here at the end of the walk near Colorado Park, and I believe there's a fair amount of multifamily housing again to the north of there.
I have a question related to sidewalk, if you don't mind at this point?
No,
Or do you want to
go
wait to
ahead.
the end? Why are we stopping the sidewalk 300 feet from University? Isn't there some sidewalk on University already? Is it just spotty?
Because basically it doesn't go anyplace, and we're trying to watch our costs as much as possible. And we feel like when that area is developed on that corner, then the developer will go ahead and finish off extending the sidewalk in front of their property. It's similar, we also at one time putting some signs in at the entrance to Weed Park, and a nice signage entrance, and we eliminated or cut that out to try to keep our costs down on this project.
Kind of show a little bit more of the multimodal aspect or the look of the road. We've got a couple typical sections. The one at the top is basically what you'll see pretty much from Park Avenue down to the entrance at Weed Park. A sidewalk, a 3-lane roadway with a center left turn lane, and then a sidewalk on the south side as well. That sidewalk on the south terminates at the Running River Trail at Weed Park. The section at the bottom represents the project at the eastern edge, where there's power poles, the Muscatine Power and Water power poles that will remain in place, and the sidewalk was kind of aligned to avoid a conflict between those two. And again, the 3-lane section and with the center left turn lane. I'll talk a little bit about how we anticipate the project will be phased during construction. When I say that, there's always the possibility that the contractor may come in and say, because of the equipment I have, or I've got a way that I think I can do this faster if you let me do this or that. And so there's always those kind of discussions that can occur after a contractor is on board. But we want to make sure that at least what we're designing is buildable, so we and give them a suggestion on how they can phase it so that everybody has an opportunity to bid it the same way. What we propose is to have phase 1, which could potentially start this fall, would allow for relocation of utilities and work off the shoulders of the road for building. As you get beyond the urban section that's in place now and go further to the east, where it's a 2-lane rural, there'll be the need to fill in the ditches and build out into Weed Park. And the thought would be that that's really something that can occur anytime during the project, and something that we think the contractor will want to get into do as early as he can, just from the aspect that there is a need to widen the road for the new 3-lane section. As I said, that's kind of what we would anticipate for Phase 1, again, utility relocation and off-the-shoulder work. Phase 2 is installation of the box culvert, and that would be the box culvert coming into Weed Park. We're anticipating allowing about 14 days for that installation. What we're putting in there is a precast box culvert as opposed to a cast-in-place box culvert. So once the contractor knows he's on board, he can talk to his supplier, have them pre-manufacture the box culvert, bring it to the site, open up the roadway, put it in, and close it back up and get out of there, versus a situation where you might have a cast-in-place box culvert going in, which would take a much longer time. But during the installation of that box culvert, there will be a need to close Colorado Street. People will still be able, there'll be access for everyone, but they just won't be able to go straight through. People that are on the east side of the box culvert will have to come in off of University. People that are on the west side of the box culvert will have to come in off of Park. Phase 3, which we anticipate occurring grab that and slide it over. We anticipate Phase 3 occurring in the spring of 2014, would be the construction of work from Park Avenue to Plaza Place. During that time, we again would anticipate the closure of Colorado Street between Park and Plaza. Still, access to all the businesses would be available either off of Park, say in the case of the Come and Go or the Meineke, whereas the Plaza Place businesses would go up to Harrison, come back down Plaza Place and get in that way. The Pierce Furniture as well would come around and access across that area as well. Phase 4 would be the next phase, and that would be basically in front of the Colorado Street School. What we're calling out is that work be done when school is out of session. It would start at just before the old alignment of Colorado, if you will, and kind of grab it from, I don't know if you can see from this point, and take it just to the east of the Colorado School. And again, during that time period, we would anticipate that the detour would be coming on the Colorado Street portion that's been constructed, up Plaza Place, over to Harrison, and back down on Bandag Drive. At the same time, if people could go up Park and over to Harrison and down Bandag as well. Phase 5 is then the portion from just to the east of the Colorado School to the end of the project, to University Drive. And to do that, we're anticipating that they will construct the south half first and build or add some additional pavement on the north half, about 5 to 6 feet we're anticipating, to allow for two-lane traffic on that north half of the road while they construct the south half. During that time, we anticipate posting the road as closed to, or for local traffic only. We'd like to see the through traffic go down University to Washington, and then take Washington back up to Park. Just feeling that any traffic we can get off there that really doesn't need to be on there would be a good thing. Phase 6 will be the north side, and at that time there'll be two-way traffic allowed on the south side of the new roadway. And again, we would anticipate the same detour for the through traffic. And then Phase 7, which I'm not sure I have listed on here, we have that anticipated as kind of that stop island right at the very end of the project at University Drive. Kind of the last page on my cheat notes here is the project statistics. Right now, we anticipate the cost to be $2.95 million. Of that kind of breaks down to the city's portion at $1.4 million, $1.2 million being contributed by federal aid that the city has received, and then we anticipate the water cost to be about $320,000 at this point in time. And as we've kind of touched base, we're hoping to have a letting in September of 2013. We have plans into the DOT and are awaiting their comments at this point in time. They have indicated that, this is a more complicated project than they typically see. They're a little bit more used to, I'll say, more rural highway type projects. But our last communication with them has been the September letting. We're on board for the September letting, so. With that, I guess I'd like to open it up for questions or comments.
What's going to happen to that, the bend that we're straightening out, so to speak? Does that, what's currently there become green space? Is it still gonna be?
Couple different options. One is green space. The second one is to sell it to the adjacent property owners. Not all of it is ours. This section in here, the grayed out section, is private property, so it's just this parcel right in through here. A portion of it will be green space. You could sell this to the adjacent property owner, this, and a chunk of this here. We have a couple of options that we're looking at and exploring with adjacent property owners.
Because I know right now where Meineke sits, you have a tendency for some of those cars to pull out the back
That
right
option
onto the road.
That option will be gone.
Yeah,
You'll have
I'll
a
slide that
good
down again.
Parking area at the current design right here.
But they won't be able to pull out of that corner anymore and,
As far as, we're putting, there'll be two accesses onto the Meineke property. There'll be one located right here at the very kind of the eastern edge of their current property. And then there'll be a joint driveway between the old Hardee's facility and Meineke. And then the two drives that Meineke has right now near the intersection of Colorado and Park will be closed.
Okay.
I'm not sure if
good,
that answers your question or not.
good. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it possible to get a copy of this PDF file so we could look into it closer?
You bet. Yeah, I can send it to Randy, or if you guys want to contact me direct, we can send it to you as well.
Could we squeeze a roundabout in there anywhere? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Colorado University. Works just fine. Yeah.
Council, any questions for Bob? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, welcome to Muscatine.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on tonight's agenda is a presentation on the city's flood preparedness plan, and I believe that's Randy Howell. And Randy Hill.
Sit here and you think, did I say Kent Stein Park a second ago? I meant Weed Park, obviously, but you sit down thinking, what am I saying? The next presenter tonight, the third presenter, Randy Howell. Greg asked that Randy give a presentation tonight, pretty much as an extension of the presentation that he gave at the meeting on May 29th down at the Joint Armed Forces Center, when we talked about the flood inundation study. The for those that weren't there, Randy started the program off talking about what we do right now with high water events. And Steve Boca then talked about what has been done recently, what's to be done in the future as far as infrastructure improvements. And then the Corps of Engineers and the Magic staff gave the presentation on a what-if scenario if the levee broke. But tonight's presentation is from our Redway Maintenance Supervisor, Randy Howell. The burden of being prepared for high water flooding falls squarely on Randy's shoulders. This is something that we plan for every spring. I don't want to say it's routine, but we know the water's going to come up, and so we get ready for it. Over the years, we have done an awful lot as far as knowing when the water gets to a certain level, what we do next. And we continue to tweak that and make it better. And with that, Randy will tell you just what he does.
Evening, Mayor Hopkins, council members. As Randy explained, kind of a flood preparedness type thing. What we've put together over the years is a book. This is my book. It's a book that pretty much tells me everything about everything that has been done since Ray Childs actually put this book together when he retired to is being updated this year now after the two floodgates were put in. We're going to add that information, the Mississippi Drive floodgate and the East 2nd Street big slide gate. We've got extra information from the Corps, so we're going to incorporate that into this. This has everything from detours, pictures, everything that we do that encompasses flood control from East 2nd Street Bridge, partially up Mag Creek, down to as far as Pine Street. And then there's another gate that we really don't think about till water gets up about 26 feet, which is up there a long ways. We've got a gate that actually closes off the main spur of the railroad. So with that, normally till the water gets to 16 feet as far as the flood gauge, we're just kind of watching the weather, seeing what the predictions of rain and things are. And that particularly, we watch that because of Mag Creek. As the river comes up, Mag Creek backs up. And the flash flood, if we get a heavy rain, all it does is it just pushes it up to where that's what comes up over 2nd Street. It'll come in from the Mag Creek side first and not the river side. So once it gets up to 16 feet, we're kind of just watching the weather. We're looking at flood predictions, trying to get an idea on where it's going to go. Till it hits the 17-foot range, like I said, we're just watching weather. When it hits 17 feet, water starts coming out of a storm inlet down by Papoose, right there along the river. Once we get to that point there, we know as it comes up, we have to put the Mississippi Drive detour up. That's where our people will start putting signs together, getting them set out, getting everything ready to go. Water starts to come out of a storm inlet at Walnut Street at about 18.3. Once that hits that closes those two lanes pretty quickly. So once that water starts to come up where it's just coming out of that inlet, that's when we usually put up the Mississippi Drive closure, reroute traffic up Iowa Avenue, over to 3rd, back down to Mulberry and then across the bridge. We'll take traffic there as they come into town. We'll run them on 5th, bring them back over to Iowa and then down. So we run them two different directions so they're not meeting, the semis aren't meeting each other right in the major downtown area. At 17 feet, we're kind of crossing our fingers, kind of watching to see how fast it rises. Like I said, 18 foot is our benchmark as far as putting up the detour. Once we get an idea where it's going to go, and usually it's up around 19.2, we have to put the Mississippi Drive floodgate up. At that point, we're contacting Heinz's, we're contacting the railroad, because they rely on their rail car deliveries, so we're trying to coordinate that even as the Mississippi Drive corridor is closed. At about 19.4, that gate actually goes up, and at 19.6 there's water on it. So it's just, we wait to the last minute there, primarily for Heinz's so they can get their cars in and out. Once it hits that 19.6 number, then we're immediately going in and actually getting the Second Street detour put up and getting it ready, getting it set out, ready to be put up. What we found this year was with that new gate structure, they actually moved the gate structure 14 foot closer to town. By doing that, they lowered that gate, which means that it floods quicker. So before, we would be putting that flood structure up at about 20.8, 20.9, 21, somewhere in there. Now at 20.5, we have water at the gate structure. So we have to put it up just a little bit earlier. That Second Street detour encompasses so much more. Han, they lose their access to their warehouses, so primarily everything is rerouted over Washington Street and over on 5th Street. So it kind of bottlenecks up the downtown, but over the years we've refined that. It really, really works well. We used it when that gate was actually put in. So they actually used our detour for that. The DOT found that it did work well with little or no revisions. When we get to that 21 to 22 number, 22 primarily is when we start walking that levee 24 hours a day. I'll take my crew and I divide them up where we have our day shift. I kind of split it just like we do for snow removal. I have a day shift and that works 7 to 7, and then I got a night shift that comes in 7, works till 7 in the morning. So I divide up my crew so we got somebody walking that levee 24 hours a day. We look for boils. Mayor Hopkins had a great question. What's a boil? Well, boil primarily is this water that's coming through the levee that actually swirls. And as it swirls, it's taking the sand away. And it's moving the sand away from the levee. What we do is we go down and we make sandbag ring. So what that boil is, say 6 to 8 inches round, we'll make a 2 to 3 foot circle around there with bags. And we stack those bags up so as that water comes up, it pushes on that boil and stops it. And it's actually remarkable that just that little bit of water pressure stops that, but it does. But our boil area really that we have to really watch is down at Musser Park. This year at the flood, I got a call from PD. He says the levee's leaking. Got a really bad problem down there. It does leak, but it was designed to leak. I mean, at areas where it's all sand, the water gets to a certain pressure, it has to leak. We made provisions to let that water run, and it runs into our storm sewer. We keep the ball field now from flooding. We've made some upgrades with that down there. So with patrolling the levee, we watch that. We educate our people on what to look for. At that point, we don't really run into a problem until we get up into the 24-foot range. At that, water is right at the steps at the hotel. At that point, we're making preparations to move that detour all the way back to Pine. And I'll tell you, when we get to that point, it is hairy because Pine for semis is extremely difficult to get around. We encourage the truckers to use, we have signs out on each end of the bypass to use the bypass and go around. One of the main problems is, of course, 92 at the bridge. How do you get there? So we actually have signs made up to actually point them to that bridge from the bypass in. So, and then also from the bridge to the bypass and then around south. So at 24 feet, we've got our hands full. Again, I told you 26 feet, we closed the main railroad. At that point, Davenport's been closed down for quite a while, so it really doesn't really affect the railroad that much. They have nowhere to go in between. Other than that, it's the new flood walls. I did want to talk to you about the new flood walls. I know Phil's been around for quite a while. The old flood walls were made up of big steel panels, 2 foot by 8 foot. And Mississippi Drive panels were, I think there was 26 panels. And they were all held together by great big 10-inch I-beams and then brackets that we had to bolt into place. It was very time consuming, 3 to 5 hours to put the Mississippi Drive structure up. The new one now is tubular aluminum panels that go into channels. It takes us about 1 hour and 30 minutes to put it up. So that structure there has really shortened our time, actually made it easier for Heinz's to have more time to get their cars in and out. The Second Street floodgate structure, that consisted of 30 panels, took 5 to 7 hours to put up. The new gate is on tracks. It takes us about 30 to 40 minutes to clean those tracks out. Takes us about the same amount of time to slide the gate over, button it down, and that street's closed. So the improvements have made our work so much easier. But I've never been around with the seawater that top 26 feet, so at that point, we'll be relying on the Corps to give us directions on how to proceed, because we're going to have some issues. But other than that, we practice on getting the gates closed. We keep everything maintained well so we can put it up in a hurry. Make sure that all the employees know what's going on. We really got it down to science. We're very, very fortunate with our levee system and stuff in place that we got pretty good water protection. Are there any questions?
Randy, what's the height of the flood wall? Is that 26 feet?
Well, the old flood wall, as far as the Mississippi Drive seawall, was right at 26. Then we added that extra 2 foot to it when we did that first Mag Creek improvement. So now it's theoretically up to 27, and that's where I don't. They say that water can get there, and it'll still be fine. But at 27 feet, we've got water almost up to 3rd Street downtown. So we've got other issues if water actually gets that high.
Randy, what is the maximum or the height that the river has ever gotten?
I think the 93 flood was, I think, in the range of 2560.
Okay.
And at that point, when you're walking the levee on the trail, that water is just right there. When they raise that levee, I don't know, Steve Boca refers to it as freeboarding, but when they raised that, one of the primary things that they were trying to help us with was by raising that water. At that point, the river's closed, but you get a lot of wind and it starts waves and the white, call them white caps. They give us protection to that so the water wouldn't skate up over top of the levee. And I don't know what we would do after that 27 range. At that point, like I say, we're talking to the Corps, and we got some experts who are going to be directing us on what we're going to do.
You mentioned that we've had leaks before, but have we ever had anything worse than leaks?
No, there's been some boils. We've had boil problems at Musser Park, and then there have been some boil issues down at GPC. And we've always made sure that GPC, if they need bags, all they got to do is call. We've got them. We take them down to them when they let me. I'll usually come in the back gate, and if they need any help, or as far as watching it or what to look for, I'll help them with that. But no, it's just we've had a few boils now and then, and just really haven't had any major issues. Not really.
Could you explain just quickly the scenario? What if on the city website that we had some great scenarios given to us by the Corps of Engineers, I believe were by Iowa, that if we did have a break, what happens and who gets flooded? And
I tell you, Randy, that's right up your alley. He's been the one
I
that's been
thought
spending the most
that was
time.
an excellent idea, and more people should look and watch that video.
First of all, I met recently with John Krusenstein, Mark Warren, Mark Yerington, Connie Mann, so that we can get all the information that's been provided to us by the Corps of Engineers, announced this, I think, at our last meeting, as well as what Magic can do on the website, so people can see it. And what you'll be able to do is go to a specific location and put your cursor on it, and it will tell you how much time will elapse before there's a foot of water or 2 feet of water.
Sure.
The significance of a break is another hour into the meeting. The long and short of it is, when it breaks, there's no stopping it, and the water will rise to the level of the river. And it will fill the entire basin area, and that probably would be done over a week's time. And the standard that the Corps used was the 93 flood. The significance for us, all the people in this community, is A, safety and evacuation, and that gets into evacuation routes. What can you use? They tell you, the Corps will say you get a foot of water over a roadway. It gets to be hard to negotiate, especially in vehicles, small cars. And remember, you can't see the road. You get 2 feet, and it's hard for trucks. We know that a break at Musser Park would immediately go west along the slough, which in hindsight makes a lot of sense. It's not what I thought initially, but my guess is that it just starts spilling down Stewart Road, but it does not. It goes west. But by doing that, it pinches off Grandview real fast. So as far as an evacuation route. Then there are all sorts of other scenarios. You get into the well fields, Power and Water's well fields, and how are they going to be impacted by it? And that gets into public safety for the rest of the community, for fire prevention. You have issues with the treatment plant, and so that becomes an issue. So, I mean, they're farmers. What do they do with their livestock? How do they get them out of there? Their equipment. Businesses, what do they do to protect their equipment? In talking recently with some representatives from what GPC has always been to me, is that the study actually helps them because it gives them an idea of how much time will elapse so that they can prioritize what they're supposed to do. And that, I would imagine, is how some of the other businesses are looking at it also. But we will meet, I think, when in July, first part of July, Greg?
July 3rd,
Yeah.
at staff level, to talk about updating the evacuation plan or the emergency plan that was developed last year. We'll be updating that as well.
Exactly. So, the ball's back in our court now for us to do our thing. We'll get the information out to the public so that they can see it also. Businesses now have the data in front of them, and we'll go with it from there. But that's the what-if scenario, and we hope that it never happens.
I just want to thank you and your crew for bringing it to our attention that the what if something would happen.
But thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
It's been a good study. So.
Council, anyone else have questions? Bring forward with Randy. And Randy, thank you. Okay, down to item number 5, comments from the council. Anyone have anything they want to talk about?
Mayor, I'd just like to say I enjoyed the performance the other night at Preservation Hall Jazz Band. And I'd just like to thank you and the others that helped bring that event down here. I thought that was a great thing to have. So, thank you.
I enjoyed that concert as well. Anyone else, council?
No?
Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
One quick item.
Pardon?
One quick item. I'm just going to pass
Oh,
these
you
around.
have
I've only got
something? Okay.
2 copies. I didn't get enough for everybody, but I will be emailing them out tomorrow. This is the Iowa League Annual Conference. If you're interested in it, grab one and take it with you. There's only 2, but there'll be an email copy in your inbox tomorrow as well for you to take a look
You can
at.
have it.
I would encourage you, if you are interested, to let Fran know as soon as possible. Those hotels fill up rather quickly, but please let her know if you're interested in attending as soon as possible.
Where is it?
Buke. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Councilman Tom. Meeting's adjourned.
We would have been here all night. Osama's gone.
That's right.